and I'd like to welcome you to Jeppy's Entertainment Museum.
Again?
I like this mask. It's very cool. I'm the Joker deep down inside. Tee-hee, tee-hee. All right, fine.
Welcome to Two Guys and a Comic Book. My name's Brittany.
And I'm Zach. We have a great show for you, so please stay tuned and we'll be right back.
You know, from the Milestone era to the Afrofuturism artwork that is really gaining momentum right now to milestonestheshow.com. Read it right below me.
Hi, welcome back to Two Guys in a Comic Book. I'm Zach.
And I'm Brittany.
Thank you for joining us here today. Now, what we're going to talk about, a couple of things. I have notes today, so we're actually trying to keep it together. First thing I really wanted to talk about today, since we had the chance, and we had Brittany joining us, who's got a different view than Mike, who is still on assignment. First thing I want to talk about with you as a fan, with everything, is I want to talk about event fatigue. Now, this is something that gets brought up all the time. In fact, when I was involved in the retailers panel at Marvel put on at New York Comic Con, all the editors that were there were very strong about talking about the idea of event fatigue because, and I have a list here, and this is just Marvel. Since March 2013, this is the list of events, and I've made sure to catch it, that have come out. We have had Age of Ultron, which was written by Brian Michael Bendis.
Right.
We had Infinity, which was written by Jonathan Hickman, and was, in addition to being its own book, also you had to pick up Avengers and New Avengers to complete the story. So that's an 18-issue event. Then you had Battle of the Atom, which was a crossover between all the X-Men books. You have Trial of Jean Grey, which was a crossover between all new X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy. You also have Goblin Nation, which was the ending of Superior Spider-Man leading to Peter coming back.
Right.
Then you have Revolutionary War, which was a very cool event that I wish they'd do more of, where you had all these British characters they were focused on, and they had a little mini event. It was all British writers that did it, so it was a very cool idea. And then you had the big events. You had Original Sin with Jason Aaron that just wrapped up. You have Death of Wolverine that is technically still going on with all the tie-ins. And then the end of the year, you have 3 events going on in 3 different books. You have Axis going on, which is taking over the majority of the events and going on and spinning out of Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers. You have Spider-Verse, which is going on right now in the middle of Amazing Spider-Man and launching the Spider-Woman book, the Silks book coming up, and then the Spider-Gwen book coming up. And then you also have Out of Time, which is this Avengers event that Hickman is doing, again, through both Avengers and New Avengers, and that's crossing over and going to lead to their big event next year. That's just within the last, say, 20 months.
And I literally ran out of fingers.
Yes. And then we're talking about going into the next year, you have the end of the Fantastic Four is going to be an event. Mm-hmm. You have a No More Mutants event that's spinning out of Axis and spinning out of all the events from the mutants. And then you have an X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy crossover, in addition to the aforementioned Secret Wars, which is the big culmination of everything Hickman is doing. You're talking in almost a 25-month period. I lost count. And as as someone that's a comic fan that really enjoys the medium, this is a lot of commitment to ask for fans. Now, exactly. You being a fan that does a little more reading here than you say you buy,
right? How
do you feel about it as far as getting into the books that you're trying to go ahead and read?
Well, honestly, the whole reason that I got into some of the events, like the only reason I got into Axis, because there was a Carnage book coming out.
Okay.
I follow more characters than I do events because just to try and find that one issue in the middle where that's the one piece of the puzzle that we need to realize why he's coming back from the dead or blah, blah, blah. It gets tiring. And I work at a comic book shop. So, just for even me to find it tiring, I know that other people, literally, they come in here and say that they're tired of events.
Yeah. Well, and not just that. Like, I listed all this off. I've read most of them. And now, some of the books I was already reading, so it wasn't that big a commitment. But there's other books that I'm not reading that I have to then spend my own hard-earned money to go ahead and get to try and get the full story.
Right.
I mean, with Infinity, you had a main series, and then if you weren't reading Avengers and New Avengers, you had to pick that up to go ahead and get the full story.
Right.
And that's not even counting, at that point in time, there were tie-ins across the entire universe. So you're talking about all these books going on and all this stuff tying in. And the big thing, the reason events were started was because it was supposed to change the foundation of the comics and of the characters.
Yes.
And give you jumping on points, which is cool. Comics are always supposed to be creating new jumping on points for new fans.
Exactly.
The trouble is, though, you never get a full chance to expound on what happened in the event because, I mean, we mentioned it right here. You're going from Original Sin, which was a huge event that Jason Aaron did, and spoiler alert, Nick Fury is now the Watcher, and that's a big thing. He's now a man of action that is now placed in a spot where he cannot act.
Yeah.
This is something that should have a larger repercussion across the universe and should have more storytelling going on in it. Instead, you have everything that happened in that event just brushed aside to get to Remender's Axis, because it was literally, I think, 2 weeks before you had the end of Original Sin and you had the beginning of Axis. So now you're talking about these events aren't even given the seasons to breathe.
Right.
So my biggest issue is the fact that they don't feel special. They don't matter anymore. You're talking about stuff that is just happening for the sake of selling books. And then you take a look at a bunch of the other publishers out there, and DC, one of the many things I will say about DC is the fact that they're not bad. They had Fear Itself, which
Right.
crossed into everything. Mm-hmm. But not Fear Itself. Forever Evil.
Yeah.
So I get those two confused. But you had these two. You had this event that crossed into everything, but it didn't hurt anything.
Right.
And it didn't cross into other than a handful of books that it would make sense to. You still had ongoing continuities. But at the same time, you have a ton of other stuff going on as well. That's, again, much like we went through the entire list with Marvel, that's causing you to have to pick up other books.
Yeah. Death
So,
of the Family was one.
Death of the Family, the Year Zero stuff, where you had Snyder writing all that stuff. And now the weekly books have even kind of turned into more event-style books, but long form. Stuff like the Future's End and World's End and Earth 2 and the Batman Eternal, which is tying into everything Batman. And with that one, with stuff, you kind of have to read this. If you weren't reading Eternal, but you were reading Catwoman, there's a large jump between the end of the most recent Catwoman writer's run and the beginning of one with events that spin right out of Eternal. And if you weren't reading it, you don't know where that jump comes from.
Yeah.
So it's really weird to see all this stuff, and as a fan, to go ahead and try and wrap my brain around it, because at the end of the day, I want stuff to matter.
Yeah.
Yes, these are just funny books. Yes, these are just characters. And yes, they're even larger some ads for the movies. But also, they're supposed to go ahead and sell us the idea of the universe.
Right.
And these events don't do that because it's always going through and changing stuff and leading to interesting things that never get fleshed out.
Yeah. It can get a bit overwhelming at times. Whereas, I've noticed that with a lot of independent comics, there isn't very many events happening. I mean, like with Valiant, they tie in everything.
Well, that's a little different. That's the Valiant universe.
Valiant. Exactly.
And even to a smaller thing, the smaller companies, when they have crossovers, it feels important. When Dark Horse announces you're getting Conan and Red Sonja running around in a book together, that's a big deal. When they announce the Punisher versus Predator, not Punisher, Archie meets the Predator, you're really excited about that book because it's something that's so different. Or even on a smaller scale where you had that one issue of Chew and that one issue of Revival that crossed paths. That's a big moment and something cool, but it was only one issue. It never made you have to continue reading both books and buying both books to get the full story.
Yeah. It feels more of a commitment than it is for fun.
Exactly.
At this point. And Django and Zorro, that was actually pretty awesome.
Well, Django and Zorro's, again, that's completely different. That's a pulp book, but it's such a cool idea.
Such a great crossover.
Well, we're going to go from really good ideas to really bad ideas.
Okay.
Because the next thing I want to talk about, and again, I want to make sure that this is our personal opinion. This does not reflect on DC and Marvel as a whole or on the museum as a whole. It's our personal opinions on this. The biggest thing that we're really going to talk about is Suicide Squad, because there's been a lot of casting rumors that have come up, and it should be a good moment for us as fans, because you had DC announce that slate of movies.
Yeah.
And then you had Marvel follow up and announce their slate of movies. Not to mention you have Marvel doing all sorts of stuff in television. DC's launched a whole bunch of successful TV shows right now. This should be the perfect time, and I should be excited.
Right.
I'm not.
No.
Because as a fan of the Suicide Squad or Secret Six, however you want to talk about them, there's a handful of characters I really want to see.
Yeah.
And the one thing that Marvel has done, they've created a blueprint on how to make this work. If you want to make a cohesive universe, Marvel has the blueprint. This is how it works. You take your characters, you let your characters tell the story, and you don't worry about you assume that the audience is smart enough to go ahead and get behind this.
Yeah.
Perfect example of this is Guardians of the Galaxy this year.
Guardians too.
Well, not just that, it was the biggest movie of the summer, and you had no idea who these characters were.
Right.
You were enveloped in the universe as a whole because of all the awesome stuff going on and because of the characters. Not because of who was playing the characters, but just because they provided a great characterization. DC is not doing that. First off, DC has made their television and their movies separate, which is a huge mistake when you have such great actors in the roles, such as, I think it's Matt Ryan, I think, who is the leading Constantine, who has just been phenomenal as John Constantine.
Yeah.
And then you have Stephen Amell, who is playing this really cool, different version of Ollie that, as someone who's a fan of the Green Arrow, I like the older Ollie. Stephen Amell has made me appreciate this younger version of Ollie.
Yeah.
And made me really kind of accept this as the new continuity and this character as a whole. You have, in these two examples, two ready-built characters that can go right into the movie universe and become a part of it.
Yes.
Instead, they go ahead and they recast everything. The movies are separate, and in fact, one of the big issues that's come out of this is that Stephen Amell is unhappy with his producers at DC because of the announcement of the Flash movie. The Flash movie kind of undercuts the television show because then why you're going to go watch the show if it's not going to matter in the long haul and the long scheme of things.
Right.
And it's unfair to the actor playing the Flash to announce a movie and a casting because then you take away everything he's doing and it goes away. It just kind of goes up in smoke and it's just this side thing. But we're talking about Suicide Squad, and now I want to be sure to clear, all of this is rumored and nothing's been official. The only thing we know is they're going to start shooting this spring in Toronto.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now, the big thing with this is the character, much like Guardians of the Galaxy, the Suicide Squad or Secret Six, they're kind of one and the same.
Right.
Especially in the modern days, has a rotating cast of characters.
Yeah.
And there are different people that love different teams. Kind of like how Guardians was. Marvel made the decision to pick a team that was known in the books.
Yeah.
With a bunch of characters that were unknown. And they were going to be the team. Now, so far, and again, not confirmed, nothing's come out from DC, but what we've rumored is that the team is going to be Deadshot, which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn. No, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but since she's in the most recent Suicide Squad books, I can get behind that. I can actually be very happy with that and go, okay, you want to put a known character and get her out there in medium. That's fine. The next two are the ones that really upset me. The Joker. That's the right response. And then they're going to go ahead and supposedly spin Lex Luthor from the Batman vs. Superman movie into the Suicide Squad. Not to mention the fact there's a couple other people that have been rumored to go ahead and be cast in it, and they've not been mentioned. Will Smith is one of the ones that has been mentioned.
Yeah.
Which I think Will Smith would make a great character for Black Manta, who is a part of Suicide Squad and Secret Six. But at the same time, I don't know. That's not the character that he's being rumored for. I forget the character's name.
Me too.
But you have all this stuff, and you have them, instead of doing, again, what Marvel's done, where they don't necessarily find stars, they find talent. The casting for this is Jared Leto. They want him to be the Joker, which is a bad casting in my opinion, because he's coming off of all of his fervor and fanfare for Dallas Buyers Club. He just won the Oscar.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you want to bring that in. Maggie Roberts, who is Leonardo DiCaprio's wife from Wolf of Wall Street,
right.
She is being mentioned as Harley Quinn. I don't know enough about her to know if it's a good decision, but if they're casting her, I'm afraid they're going to, instead of making Harley an independent character and a strong woman, they're going to just make her a sex symbol. Which, again, looking at the Marvel blueprint, you don't need that. Jai Courtney is Deadshot. Now, I'm not too familiar with him.
Yeah, I don't.
And I've seen some of the looks and some of the headshots of him. I'm okay with that because I get the feel he could be a very good Deadshot.
Yeah.
So that one's not as upsetting. And then the one that, again, this upsets me from the very beginning.
The Social Network dude
Jesse Eisenberg
is Lex Luthor.
Supposedly reprising his role from Batman vs Superman.
The Social Network dude.
I don't know how I feel about any of this, because as a fan I should be excited. These are movies and characters that I want to see on screen.
Freaking Zombieland
is Lex Luthor. No, I'm with you on that 110%. I don't like his casting, and there's another thing that I'm really scared of. Warner Brothers has a history of announcing entire slates of movies.
Yeah.
And if they don't perform the way they're supposed to,
they crap it.
They kill everything. Yeah. And I don't know if DC can go ahead and hold out. There's always going to be a place for Batman. There's going to be a place for Superman. Those movies will always get remade. It's kind of like Spider-Man. It's kind of like, the X-Men. There's always going to be a place for them.
Right.
But a lot of the different stuff they're talking about, from the Flash to Green Lantern to Cyborg to Wonder Woman, if that first movie doesn't work, and then they cancel everything, I don't know if we'll ever be able to see those movies made while Warner Brothers holds the properties.
Right.
And this comes down to having uncreative people try to create. And I think that's been DC's biggest problem, both in comics and in movies, for the longest time.
Yeah.
So I really want them to try and get their head wrapped around everything, and understand that you don't have to put stars, you don't have to put characters we know. Make it entertaining, make it well done.
Right.
The fans will come.
Yeah.
The fans will get excited, and if you do it right, I will tell you. You will tell your friends who aren't comic fans, and so on and so on and so on. That's how Guardians got so big.
Yeah.
I had a friend that thought it looked silly to have a giant raccoon with a gun and didn't understand it. 3 months of us talking about it, and she was all in.
Yeah.
That's how these movies grow and how these characters become such huge pop culture characters, is that we tell them it's awesome. They believe us because we've been right before. And then they get into it because they see it. It is awesome.
Yeah. I drove friends to theaters.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, look. You're like, oh, you haven't seen Guardians yet? All right, let's go.
Now, speaking of terrible ideas, because we are talking about, I want to switch paths back to Marvel. Because it sounds like we're being very happy with Marvel. I'm not. Now, again, this is not on Marvel. This is not Marvel Studios, this next part. This is Fox. And again, personal opinion, Fox is doing a Fantastic Four movie. Now, the gentleman that's doing it is Frank Trank. He is known for Chronicles. Very, very fun film.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable film. Found footage, very well done. Written by Max Landis, John Landis' son. So very, very cool. He's rebooting the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four casting, they were never going to get it right going younger. So,
that's true.
You have Miles Teller as Mr. Fantastic.
Kate Mara?
Kate Mara.
Yeah.
Kate Mara as Sue Storm. Michael B. Jordan, which is an amazing casting as the Human Torch.
Yeah.
And then Jamie Bell as, I believe he is playing the Thing. Again, not the actors I would pick, but we're going for a younger version, so that's fine.
Yeah.
The thing that upsets me is there's been a leaked story treatment that's supposedly been floating around.
Yeah.
Now, again, completely rumored, no one's confirmed anything, but the basic story is that Reed Richards is a nobody who writes a science paper while he's working at his convenience store, and I believe he's an orphan. This paper is found by Sue Storm's father, who is the head of the Baxter Building, and I believe they're calling it the Future Foundation, I don't know. And he brings Reed in because his paper then leads to the big event they're doing of connecting a portal to the end zone, the negative zone. And as a Fantastic Four fan, this is stuff that's supposed to get you excited.
Right.
Reed goes with his friend, Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, to see this open, to see these events happen. The main character, and this is also another thing that upsets me, the biggest villain in Marvel is Dr. Doom.
Right.
In this treatment, Dr. Doom does not go by Victor Von Doom. I forget the last name, but it is not Von Doom.
Doomstead?
Yeah, Doomstein, something.
I don't know.
Something very just off the wall. And his role as he plays, instead of Doom being the leader of Latveria, he's a hacktivist who decides that he hates the 1%, like Sue Storm's father, and decides to go ahead and basically sabotage this end zone opening.
So he's an anti-villain?
He sounds more like an anti. He sounds a lot like the gentleman that has stole all the documents a while back.
Okay.
In the one that was in the news and leaked it all to the press and everything.
I'm sure Social Network played that movie too.
Yes. Actually, no, that was Benedict Cumberbatch.
Cumberbuns.
But so you have him doing this hacktivist role instead of being the maniacal doom, the doom that we know. And what happens is when the thing goes crazy, it gives all of them powers, and they all get different powers. Ben turns into the Thing, but he can control it on and off. You have Michael B. Jordan, who is Human Torch. He can turn into fire. Kate Mara can go ahead and turn invisible. My one thing I found funny is that Reed's left unchanged, which makes no sense to me, because one of the big things with Reed is not only is he ability to stretch everything, but his mind expands as well, making him smarter.
Yeah.
So we get to that, and then because of the fact that his sabotage failed and gave these 4 people powers, Doom, as he's known by his internet handle, decides that he wants powers, so he tries to recreate the mistake that he makes to give himself powers. Now, I don't remember the ending of the treatment other than the fact that when the explosion happens, Ben shields Reed from it, and then Ben supposedly can't turn his powers off now, and that's the end of the movie. There's so much wrong with that. I'm a fan of the Ultimate Universe, and that is very similar to the Ultimate creation of the Fantastic Four, but it's completely off. Not to mention the fact that you have this thing where there are a handful of things in comics that have to stay true. Uncle Ben died. You can't change that. Captain America was frozen in ice. And Sue Storm and Johnny Storm are related by blood.
Yeah.
And when Michael B. Jordan was announced as casting, there was this huge fervor about what, could he do?
Yeah.
About him being African American. I have no problem with that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what do you think on it, obviously?
Oh, honestly, I thought that as soon as I saw him being casted, I was just like, I know Sue is still going to be good. There's no way that she could actually go ahead and jump ship and actually look just like Michael.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to cater to make sure that everybody is safely accepting their setup. Which, honestly, the way that I see it, just make them both black.
Exactly.
Or make them both white. Or just make them actually look similar.
Exactly. And I'm sorry, I think it would have been a huge thing for the movie to have Reed and Sue in a relationship where you have, all the issues that come with that.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be an interracial relationship. I feel that would be a much deeper storyline to go with if you want to modernize it.
Exactly. And then not only that, I mean, even if they were related and they didn't look alike, there are a lot of mixed relationships where they do have children that, we have one kid that's darker and one kid that's lighter. You can have a huge range of different colors when it comes to having children from mixed races, but it just depends on your genetic code.
And I'm really upset with the idea of trying to go ahead and placate everyone without trying to go ahead and write. At the end of the day, everything we've described sounds terrible. It's one of those things you can read on paper and it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
And I would and again, Marvel's showing the plan. You make quality movies, people are going to go ahead and go out there and see it.
Exactly.
Now, we have a little bit of time left.
Okay.
I do want to talk about some books real quickly. The first thing I want to talk about, and we'll do it very quickly, is Valiant Comics. Now, Valiant Comics has come out, they've come back after a long hiatus. They were a big comic company in the 90s. And they have been put together, and they've been going around for 2 years now, and are one of the top 10 publishers in the country. To be a top 10 publisher in that short a time,
incredible.
Speaks to the strength of your characters. Obviously, one of the main characters that people would know, probably, is Bloodshot.
My favorite.
Now, you can talk a little bit about Bloodshot.
It's basically Bucky meets Wolverine with tiny robots.
Okay.
And more blood. And basically what it is that he's basically just a project to this basic, insert here, Secret Service team, military, blah, 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 blah. And the only thing about him is that whenever he goes on missions and then he starts, once the mission is over, they go ahead and they wipe his memory. But what happens, though, is that, of course, something goes wrong. And all of the memories of the past families that they've given him, all the past lives, actually kind of short circuit. And now all he sees are his past wives, his past children. And those are the voices that go on in his head as he tries to figure out what exactly is he, what happened, why is he being treated this way, who was he in a past life, if there was a past life. So that whole thing is happening, and then just guns and blood.
And
My favorite.
What's amazing with all these characters, because we have some other stuff laid out here, such as Quantum and Woodley, I highly suggest checking this book out. One of the funnest books that you'll see nominated for a ton of Harveys at this year's awards is for humor and writing
For
and
obvious reasons.
new ongoing series. Brilliantly done. You have these characters here that are beloved. We have the Harbinger book, which is my personal favorite.
Right.
And then we also have Shadow Man, which is a very cool, almost Spawn-esque character.
Right.
But the way they do it and the way they incorporate some of the Louisiana voodoo into it and everything is very, very cool. But the one thing that Valiant has done is they went and found talent. They went and found, especially starting the books, cheap talent. People that are underlooked in the comic industry.
Right.
And what's cool is that they are making their big step this fall. In December, they are going all out. They're releasing a book called The Valiant, which is going to tie all their characters, which we've just mentioned a few, into one cohesive continuity. It's being written by Jeffrey Lamar, who is a fantastic young writer, well known for a lot of his independent stuff, such as Essex County. Also, Sweet Tooth is another one. Also known for, he just did Teen Titans Earth 1, which just came out. So he's a very well-known writer. And it's also going to be co-written by Matt Kind, who is known for a bunch of different stuff he's done. The biggest thing is Mind Management at Dark Horse. That's kind of his pet project where he writes and draws it.
Yeah.
And they're going to co-write the book. And then the coolest part is that they're getting Pablo Rivera, who's best known for his last run in comic books, which was, he was the Eisner Award-winning artist at the beginning of the Daredevil run by Mark Waid. So this is his first book returning back to comics. So they're doing a big push to get this universe out there and to get everyone involved. And I highly suggest checking it out when it comes out in December, because if all these writers and artists are together and they're putting the time in and the different things we've seen from them, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it is.
It's going to be well done. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. Now, I have one last thing before we go. I want to talk about a writer, and I want to take a minute to just go ahead and focus on Justin Jordan. He is a writer out of Pennsylvania. Again, very new to the industry. He's known for, this is his new book that just published a couple weeks ago, Deep State. He has another book called at Avatar called Dark Gods. And he's also done, he's on the writing team for Green Lantern, New Guardians, and his personal favorite is
Luther Strode.
And right now, him and Tad Moore are working on the third volume of Luther Strode. It'll start sometime next year.
Kids don't read this.
Yeah, this is mature content only. But I want to thank you guys again for joining us so much. Mike will be back next time. We'll go ahead and probably do a wrap up next at the end of it when we talk about best of the year. There's a lot of stuff that's come out that I really want to get a chance to talk about. So I want to thank Brittany again for sitting in with us again.
Of course.
Again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm Zach.
And I'm Brittany.
You guys have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.